Good afternoon or morning, everyone. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your busy schedule to talk with us about detecting and neutralizing money mules in your customer base. My name is Emma Cross. I'm a principal campaign lead here at Socure, and I'm here with one of our fantastic solutions consultants, Nick Collinger. Nick currently leads a team of Socure solutions consultants who support our 1,700 plus clients, helping them to identify and mitigate identity fraud around the clock. Prior to Socure, Nick has over a decade of experience in financial services and identity fraud detection, including managing first-party fraud for Chase's credit card businesses. After our conversation, we'll share some additional resources on this topic. We'll drop that in the comment section for you. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Thanks, Emma. Appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. So my first question for you, can you explain to us why financial or any institution really should audit their customer base for money mules before the end of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two major reasons I'd point to. The first is going to be kind of more macroeconomic, right? The impacts from COVID, particularly how fraudsters use those events to turbocharge their activity. We've seen massive increases in the rate of synthetic fraud across a number of different institutions, financial products, demand deposit accounts, credit cards. All of that is happening simultaneous to a shift in liability coming from regulators. So where scams and some of the other nefarious activity that mule accounts are being used to perpetrate, where those things are existing, regulators are actually pushing back to the originating institutions and pushing that liability back onto them. So there's potential for a lot of loss that folks could be incurring here in a very rapid period. And just some examples here, based off of some of our analysis, we've seen like 1 to 3% rate of synthetics on the books for folks. And then we've also seen, the regulators levying fines against, large FIs, fintechs, and even money movement folks for these types of money mule synthetic fabricated accounts. So, there's certainly a lot that is keeping money mules top of mind.
Yeah, sounds like there's a lot at stake. Um, awesome. So I understand we're currently working with several organizations to help audit their customer base. Can you share some of those findings from our initial scrubs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one that comes to mind for us, and I think we have a case out there that we can kind of point to on the website. Basically, we got about 2 million records, and the first thing that kind of just jumped off the page for us was of the 2 million records, we had about 500,000 disparate identity risk signals. Now, those aren't all going to be on individual accounts. There's kind of some caveats that I want to put in there, but 500,000 signals for undeliverable email addresses, VoIP phone numbers, commercial addresses listed as residential. It's a really overwhelming amount of signal, and kind of detecting the signal within that noise can be very challenging. So that was kind of the first thing that jumped off the page. Once we got through that noise and started to interpret the risk a little bit more clearly, some of the things that really jumped off the page were the rate of synthetics, particularly synthetic fabricated. So we were seeing almost 2% of the portfolio, 2% of these 2 million accounts were actually synthetic fabricated. And this was concerning because these folks had a very sophisticated approach to synthetic risk. They had synthetic risking at onboarding, but clearly these fraudsters had developed the techniques to bypass their strategy and were really leveraging and turbocharging their attack to get these accounts onboarded. So if you kind of take it back a step, you can estimate that the actual attack rate was probably closer to 4 or 5%, and these were the 2% that were just getting through. And to be clear, these were only currently active accounts, meaning these are accounts that are actively moving money, generating transactions. These are accounts that represent a large investment from the fraudsters. So they're doing everything in their power to keep the accounts active. They want to make sure they look good. They're not going into negative balances on DDAs. They're setting up auto pay for credit card. They're very, very clever about how they mask these activities. and using that to leverage, the broader Money Mule network that they're building. The last piece too is on top of the kind of synthetic risk, we saw just a lot of really simple risk signals that seem to have gone undetected. So, over 2% of the accounts had invalid emails, invalid phone numbers. How do you even, contact your consumer, your client, if you don't even have a good email on record for them? So these are the types of things that we're really kind of highlighting for the client and showing them on their behalf how they can remediate that.
Awesome. Yeah. And like you mentioned, we'll have a case study on this portfolio scrub in the next day or so. So we're excited to share that with everyone. So, what's the process like? So say, a customer or an organization comes to us and says, help me find, the risky identities in my portfolio. How does it work? What do we do next?
Yeah. So it's a pretty straightforward process. We like to take a white glove approach because there is so much attention that's being placed here. But the actual process itself is pretty easy. It's pretty lightweight from the client perspective. We want to work very closely. So myself or a member of the solutions consulting team, as well as folks from our data science team, are going to meet with our clients. And the first thing we want to do is kind of target a population that is appropriate for the client. So some clients may want to do their entire portfolio. They may want to scrub 30, 40, 50 million active accounts because they want to make sure that there's absolutely no doubt about what's in their portfolio. Alternatively, other clients might want to look at maybe just the most recent 2 to 3 years of new accounts, and really kind of focus on those because those are the portion of the portfolio they have less certainty about. So once we've kind of settled on the appropriate size, we're going to work very closely. We expect the file to be protected, right? So encrypted. We're going to be using secure transfer to get that over. We have to gather the necessary PII. So it's important to have a current snapshot of what the account looks like. So if there have been email updates, if there have been phone number updates, address updates, we want to have as best or current a snapshot of the identity. Once all that has been gathered, we'll collect that and send it via secure transfer. And then depending on the file size, Socure can turn the scored file back in about 2 to 3 weeks. So this is going to be a fully scored file. Every model score that Socure has on offer, every reason code that we've developed, all of that is going to be appended back to the file. We will scrub PII, so we don't have to worry about PII being exposed multiple times. And so you'll be able to join that back to the original account record. And then in addition to that, we'll work through an executive level summary where we go into detail on all the different risk signals that we've identified. We'll also include our recipes or logic that we use to identify that so our clients can recreate the analysis on their side. And then we will summarize via that executive summary where we think the largest risk exists, and also have some recommendations from our industry folks on how to best mitigate that. Included in that analysis is going to be our fraud investigations team. So we will sample a portion of these records and we'll use the fraud investigations team to go in and actually look at real identities and get a sense of the types of risks that these fraudsters are manifesting. We like I said, we're going to have a very white glove approach. So some of the examples of the risks that we'll be highlighting are going to be synthetics, both manipulated and fabricated. We can differentiate between those using our analysis. Compliance risks, so where we see deceased identities, deceased SSNs, bad addresses, commercial addresses, PO boxes, bad SSNs, third-party risks. So I mentioned, third-party fraud is also something here. We want to capture the most recent email, phone number. And so you'll see potential ATO risk associated with bad phone numbers, risky emails, those sorts of things, as well as just anywhere we've seen this identity in our consortia. So we want to leverage our network to provide feedback to say, hey, it looks like this email or this phone number has been compromised elsewhere. All of that is going to be returned back on a record by record basis. And as I mentioned, we're going to have that summarized in the executive summary. Finally, once we've given you all that information back and we've presented the results, we want to work very closely with our clients as they continue to work through that. So if they're performing manual reviews, if they're taking action in an automated fashion, we want to work with the client to observe that feedback, and then we can actually refine any risk signal across the portfolio and give them really detailed insights to say, hey, here's where you've identified the most risky pockets. Here's the other parts of your portfolio that resemble those risk pockets, and give them that sort of support in an ongoing fashion.
Wow. Okay. Well, that sounds incredibly comprehensive. I don't know why anybody wouldn't do that and get those insights. That's great. So, for everybody watching, what are the next steps, for institutions or organizations that want to make sure they're not hit by major compliance fines or losses when, proposed regulations may go into effect?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I would check out the resources that we're going to be sharing in the comments here. And that's going to provide a little bit deeper dive and some specifics about the process. And then second, we've made it really easily accessible through our website, socure.com. You can enter through there, and then you can access our organization to address your specific needs and requirements, about how we can engage with you and start the process of identifying the proper portfolio size, and expanding the scrub for the appropriate needs.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Nick. Looks like we are almost at time. So thanks everybody who joined us for this LinkedIn Live. Like Nick mentioned, we'll post a couple links in the comments with some additional reading on this topic. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great morning or afternoon.